Today we're going to look at how to assemble from scratch one of the new ClariSea fleece filter units. This model shown here is the 3000 model, which means it will handle 3000 litres of water, but the instructions that I'm going to go through are going to be the same for the 5000 model, which handles 5000 litres of water, and also the 3000 manual model. When you first get the unit, you're going to take all the parts out of the box. You're going to have a set of cut plastic parts that you assemble into the body. You're going to have a box like this with all of the motor and the electronics in. You're going to have your filter roll, and you're going to have a box of screws and other accessories. First of all, when we send out all of the plastic parts, we have them coated with a paper so that they stay in pristine condition and they don't get all damaged. Now, we found the easiest way to take this paper off is just to take a bowl of water, get the corner of it wet, and this material will come off very, very quickly and very, very easy. So what happens is you just peel off all of these edges, and it means that all the plastic parts that we've sent to you are not covered in existing fingerprints and they're not covered in dirt and grime. Moving to another part which is clear, so you can actually get a better idea of what it looks like. We'll take, for example, one of these splash plates. I'll just wet the corner a little bit. Just get my nail on there, get a hold of the corner of it, just to lift a little thing, and you can see how easily all of this material comes off. It just keeps it all protected and all nice so that when you get it, you feel like it's all pristine and all clear. The first thing we do before we start, we check all of the parts are there in the box. On the instructions there'll be a list with some little drawings of all the parts that should be available, and so if you haven't got any, contact us at that point. Right, assuming everything's there, we start with the back plate. The back plate is the largest of the panels and has a big curve which goes to the left hand side. Lie that down on the surface and then take one of these bottom adapter plates, has a little hole in the bottom there, that lines up with the hole in the bottom of the back plate before we start assembling the filters. So the filter plates, they have a notch at the top and they have a notch and a slot at the bottom. So the notch goes at the top and it goes into the back panel like that, that's one, into the back panel, that's two. Then we have two splash guards which are the same sort of shape, a little bit longer than the filter panels, and they go in the same way into the bottom adapter plate and into the back of the unit, like that. Right. Take the bottom filter plate, that's got a larger slot on there, that goes into the large slot on the bottom plate. And then we take the second adapter plate, and this is the fiddliest part. We just got to line all of these little notches up so that we can drop this additional plate or this final plate to make the box. There you go. That sits on there quite nicely. Next job, the two little filter rolls or the two little bottom rollers. So that goes into there, drops straight the way through and goes into the hole on the plate below. Same again on this side. Goes into the plate below. Now the next thing that we would do would be to put the front cover on, but before we do that, what we're going to do is we're going to fit this little bypass flap. Now the idea of the bypass flap, which is held on with these M5 nylon nuts, is that if you were, for example, feeding and you wanted to have a little bit more time before any of the excess food was removed from the water column, then you could open this flap and it would allow the water to bypass the filter material and come straight back into the sump. Right, put that on. Now this is actually fairly tight when you first do it, but we have modified one of the other plates to make a little spanner which you can use to tighten it up or to make it easier for you to tighten it up. Fit this plate onto the pegs on the top, fairly easy, and it's on there. Right. At this stage it's fairly wobbly, so to make it easier to put it all together, we're going to temporarily fix using the water inlet pipe. So put that together just casually, pull the machine off the table and feed that through the bottom hole and through the top hole, and then just screw the cap onto the top of it. You can see now that that holds it together rigidly, but it still has some wobble at this stage. But now what we can do is we can actually fit the proper fastenings in from the back, nut on the front, tighten it up, and we do the same thing in from the back, out from the front, a little captive nut or a little washer nut. That's 3. Turn it over, and from the back, keep them all the same way. 4, 5, 6. Just drop that down. Just hold it a little bit. Then the last one goes straight through the back of here, and this is the one that actually holds the lower filter plate and adapters into position. So that goes through there and tightens on. So having done all that, we can now take off this part, and the whole thing is now nice and solid. Right. The next thing I suppose we need to do is to put the paper through the system whilst I've still got plenty of access to it. So take the paper, and it's going to go in the machine like that with the roll coming off the bottom. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit of slack, put it down like that so it doesn't roll off the table, and I'm going to use my hand, put it inside, and I'm going to push that corner through the bottom of the filter plate, grab a hold of the end of it, and I pull it back through. Again, with my hand inside, what I do is I feed it under the plate, or around the roller and under the plate, and then I poke it back out the other side there with my fingertips, feed it back around that of the roller, pull the corner, just use the corner is the easiest part to get a hold of, and then we pull it through. So now, that was fairly easy, we now have that in the machine. Right, to support the clean roller we take this plate with a hole in it, we take the longer of the two M8 threads or screws, and we take the plate, and what we do is we push that onto there and we screw it onto the support tube. This is designed to go onto there, so it will go off and on there. So I'll just put it onto there for now. Tidy up some of this roll that's now a little bit loose. Put it onto there, and then push the front cap on, which will support the front of the roll and keep it in the right place. So there we go. Right. Next stage is to fit the float switch. The manual unit doesn't have the float switch, but the automatic ones do have the float switch. So take this part here, which is going to be mounted like that, with the float pointing downwards, unscrew the cap, unscrew the nut, put that through under the threads, and then we tighten that through. Right, now that's going to mount onto the back here on this lower slot, and there's a hole at the top. What we do is we take the cable and we slide it through the hole at the top, and that means that all of the cables are out of the way when it's in use. So I'm going to turn that round, take the other M5 screw, and I'm going to put it onto the end of that nut. And then you can tighten it from the outside with a screwdriver. And in the minute I've just got that finger tight. So again, you can use the same tool to go in there and tighten that up. Right. So float which is in position, clean roll is on, and what we can see now is the other part of it, which will be the dirty roller that's coming up and round the top. So picking up the motor, you can see the motor has got the motor part of it, which you can take the front off and take the motor out, and it's got a sleeve. Now the sleeve has got a slot in it so that when you finish using it, or when it's all loaded, you can pull the dirty roll off and compress it like that, and then get this part back out easily, then throw away the other part of it. So the easiest way to actually mount this on, bear in mind it's going to go like that with the nut going into the slot at the back, is to take the roll, take a pair of scissors, oops, there's an O-ring on there, and to just cut out a little notch like that, a little square or rectangle of material. Right, what we do is we're going to lift with one hand, we're going to lift this out to roll, and we're going to slide that underneath so it rolls under there for about an inch. We line up the paper like that so there's a little bit, it rolls onto the outer part and onto the corrugated part, and then we roll it around like that just to put some paper on the roll before we drop it into the slot and tighten it up. Now I don't think there's a right way or wrong way, whether the cable's at the bottom or at the top. Sometimes it's easier at the top, sometimes it's easier at the bottom. It depends on the individual unit. I'm just going to rotate that round and put it in at the top this time. Right, so on here you can see there's a line on the back plate that's designed to be fitted centrally, or to help you to centralise the nut. So that line should run straight through the middle of that bolt. Tighten that up, and that's fairly much assembled and in place. Okay, so with the kit there is a plug adapter which has got multi-country plugs and adapters on there which you can put in, and it has a red plug which goes with the red socket, and it has a black plug which goes with the black socket. Very, very straightforward. Just put that down, and here's the one that I've got over there that's plugged in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in the red to the red, I'm going to plug the black to the black, and turn it round so you can see it. And then on this part here on the controller you can see there's an alarm button, there's a power light, there's an alarm that will flash when the alarm's going off, and then there's the motor wind button. So if I press that button there, you can see that it's automatically winding on this roll and that roll, so both rolls are winding on. And so what would happen in normal use, the water level in the unit as it starts to get blocked, as the filter starts to block, it will rise up until it reaches the float, and then the float will just wind on a small amount like that, 2 or 3 centimeters, and then the water level will drop, and that's how it works. It will continue to rise, wind a little bit more, drop, wind a little bit more. Because it only winds on a little part at a time, what happens is this material here, which is a plasticized, or it's a polypropylene type of material rather than a mesh fleece, this actually dries very quickly, and so all of the material that's up here, all the dirty material, tends to be very dry, and it's not holding water and it's not smelling. Right, I'm going to unplug this again, put that down there, and we're going to look at how we're going to hang it. So this unit is designed so that it can either hang on the back using one of these hanging brackets, hang on the back of a sump, can hang on a bar that's in there, it can stand on the floor like we've got it now, but if it's standing on the base then we really are looking at a water depth of maybe 200 mils. It can stand on top of a box if you don't want to have it hanging on something. It's very, very versatile. So let's look at the hanging brackets. So these are the hanging brackets. The new ones are going to have a notch out of there to allow even more flexibility for some of the acrylic sumps. So that will go into these slots. It's very easy to go in and out because the slots are oversized to make it easier to move around. So because they're oversized, what we need to do is we need to fix this into position, or to hold it into position. And the easiest way, or the simplest way that we came up with, was a little bit of silicone tube which just goes into the bottom of the slot. It's only there to stop it from dropping off, and it's just a temporary fix. I'll put that over there. Do the same thing with this side and put it in there. Put the little silicone tube into the bottom there, and you can see now that that would hang straight onto the outside of the sump, and it would be very, very solid. Feeding the unit, we've got the water inlet pipe which is slotted, and the slots generally would be pointing downwards, although we have run it in both directions and it works both ways, but we get a much calmer surface if it's pointing downwards. So what we do, first of all, is we take the 90 bend, which is threaded one end and plain at the other end. We have a little O-ring which goes onto the end of the pipe. Now this pipe is one of the earlier versions, and the future models will actually be all moulded, and the cap will all be moulded together. But at the minute, what I'm showing you here is how we assemble it using the pipe and the separate cap. So that would be turned in there, that would be tightened round until it's pointing down at the bottom, and we can feed this into the machine either from the back, or we can feed the machine into the front, depending on where the water supply is coming from. So if we assume that this is hanging on the sump at the back and the water pipes are coming straight down, what would happen is we'll put that through there, we put the other O-ring onto the front like that, and then we tighten it on with a cap. So in that situation, the whole thing is solid, and that's really more or less ready to go. You can see here that the water pipe can come downwards, it can come in at a 45-degree angle, it could come in at a 90-degree angle, or even from below like that. And it's just simply tightened on into position with the nut on the other side. Well, I think that's about it. When you finished assembling the unit, you're probably wondering what these extra parts are that were left in the bag. What we've done to give even more flexibility for those people who haven't got space around here or around here is to create an arm which allows you to actually raise this roll and move it around to give you better positioning for your particular sump. So what we do is we take the arm, we put it on the outside, we put the bolt through, tighten it with the nut, nice and tight, and you can see it fixes it in position like that. We take the ring or the circle, which is actually replacing this thickness of the back plate. It's a spacer. Take this, unscrew this long nut, put the spacer onto there, put it back into the roll holder, and then you can see that what we can do is we can actually position it on the arm like that, tighten all that, get rid of any of the slack, and line up the badge at the front. Then what we can see is we can either have it up there like that if you didn't have any space on this side, or we could lower it down there like that if you didn't have any height or space around this area. Again, it's just giving you a little bit of flexibility. You don't have to use it, and in fact most people won't need to use it at all.